Welcome to Monologues by Hassie, where I'm going to be dropping unsolicited brain dumps from the depths of my grey matter. I'll talk about life, money, society, and self-development, plus whatever else lies up there, whilst hopefully not getting cancelled in the process. Algorithms to Date By, the computer science behind finding a wife. Now, if that title brought you in, fantastic. And the reason I wanted to record this podcast is I've been sitting on this idea for a while. And it came because I was recommended a book called Algorithms to Live By, The Computer Science of Human Decisions by Brian Christian and Tom Griffiths by a friend. And that was a fantastic book because it applied computer science algorithms to situations where we either subconsciously utilize these algorithms to do something, or how we can use these algorithms to make better decisions as human beings. And the book Algorithms to Live By is written for lay people. It is not a technical book. There are some technical concepts, but the authors have done a great job at making it very readable to people who aren't software engineers or computer scientists. So I enjoyed that book from the semi-professional perspective, but also because it was a very philosophical book. It was about how to apply something that might seem abstract to real life. So I really enjoyed reading the book. Now, the section that really drew me in was something called the optimal stopping problem or optimal stopping algorithms. And the reason that really captured me was it went through how you can apply these algorithms to pick the appropriate partner or pick the best partner with limited information. And for me, that's very applicable. I'm 30 years old. I'm single. A couple of years ago, I was actually dating somebody and I thought, this was going to be it. But that's just not how my life worked out. So right now I'm 30 and I do want to create something in the future. And if my future kids are listening to this, then I'm going to be using the optimal stopping algorithm to find your mother. So this is something that I am very passionate about using now that I've learned how to do this. And let me start by taking you through the problem. So there is a problem in the world of mathematics or computer science known as the secretary problem. And it goes something like this. You are hiring for a secretary. There are 100 candidates that you need to interview. And the rules of the game are that every time you interview a candidate, you either need to give them the job of being your secretary, or you need to reject them. And you need to say, nope, we're not hiring you today. But if you reject them, you cannot go back and hire them should you have realized that they were actually a better or the best candidate. So every time you go through somebody, it's almost like burning a card from a deck. You either choose to pick that card or you burn it, you throw it away. And so this is very relevant to a few domains, and dating is one of those domains. The other domain is that they talk about in the book is finding a rental property in a high demand market like New York, Los Angeles, or Sydney, where there are hundreds of people waiting for rental. So if you don't make an application and lock down that rental, then it's gone. Now, the dating market is a bit different because realistically speaking, I could easily go back to anybody that I've had a date on in the past and politely ask them, hey, I think I made a mistake and we should reevaluate this again. Now, of course, whether that'll actually work, they might be seeing somebody else, is a different story. But for the concept, for the high-level concept, we're going to think about dating with the secretary problem. So here's the question I pose to you. Now that you know that you need to hire a secretary, you have 100 candidates, you can, every time you reject a candidate, you can't go back and hire them. How do you go about picking the best secretary? Or what's the most optimal solution for finding someone very close to the best? And there are two extremes to this problem. Imagine that you really want a secretary badly and you just hire the first secretary that comes for an interview. Great, you've hired a secretary and this person might be the worst secretary ever because you don't know what other secretaries there are. And so this is an example of where you've executed, so you've taken a decision very early, but you've done no exploration. So in the book, they actually don't use the word execute, they use the word exploit. So maybe I'll actually use that vocabulary. So you've exploited imperfect knowledge. Out of 100 candidates, you only interviewed one, and you exploited the knowledge that you gained from the first interview immediately. And so you're probably not going to get the optimal person. At the same time, you can, but it's a very low probability. Now, at the other end of the spectrum, you could be somebody who did lots of exploration. So you could go through all 100 secretaries, and so you reject the first 99, and at the 90, when you get to your 100th interview, you now have perfect knowledge of the problem space. You know who the best secretary was, but the best secretary could have been the 40th candidate you interviewed. And now you're interviewing the 100th person, and they might be really, really a bad secretary compared to the person you interviewed at number 40. And even though you have perfect knowledge, you did not exploit that knowledge soon enough. And so that is also a suboptimal solution. So the optimal solution to finding the best secretary must lie somewhere between the two extremes of doing almost no exploration and exploiting immediately, to doing too much exploration and exploiting your knowledge till the end. And so the optimal solution for this is something called the 33%. And how the 33% rule works is it's basically saying that if you have limited information about what you like, and for me, I'm dating, so I need to date people and find out what I like and find out what values are compatible and maybe what is a non-negotiable, what is negotiable. These are things you need to discover about people. And so the optimal stopping algorithm, or the 33% rule, goes that for the first 33 secretaries that I had to interview, I should reject all of them. I should not care about doing any exploitation. For the first 33 people I see who come across my desk for this secretary job, I should reject them regardless of how good I think they are. Because all I'm doing is exploring. I'm creating a body of knowledge. So now we're not at imperfect knowledge, now we've got some knowledge. And what the problem says is that after you've gained your knowledge, so after you've interviewed 33 people, the next person who is better than the best person that you interviewed in the 33 is going to be the person that you should hire. So out of that 33, I will know what qualities the best secretary or the most compatible secretary for me is. And so when I do my next interviews, I will be measuring everybody else up against that standard. And based on that, you are now exploiting. So you are exploiting the knowledge you have after you've gone through 33% of your candidate. Now, obviously, there are some caveats there. If you're listening to this, you could probably realize that the best person could have been in the first 33, in which case the algorithm doesn't work. But it does give you a better probability of coming to an optimal solution than either having imperfect knowledge and hiring the first person or having perfect knowledge and hiring the last person. So the algorithm by itself is not perfect. You could easily get into a case where you're never going to find somebody better than the best person you found in the first 33%. But that has been found to be the most optimal solution for when do you stop and when do you pick a secretary, or when do you pick a rental property that you like, or when do you pick a partner. So in my case, if I'm applying this 33% rule, this stopping rule of when do I stop exploring and when do I start looking for that serious relationship in the dating world, in my case, looking for a wife, I've technically already failed by the metrics of this book, because I've read this book at 29 years old, just before I turned 30. Now, let's make some assumptions and we'll use round numbers to make this easy. Let's say I started dating at 20 years old and I wanted to get married by 35, or 35 is the latest I wanted to get married. Then according to the 33% rule, I should have spent the first 5 years, and you can apply this rule to time as well, right? It doesn't need to be just people. I should have spent, so I've got a 15-year span in which I want to find a wife. I should have spent the first 5 years, from 20 to 25, dating as many people and discovering what I like, what works with me. And by dating, we don't have to get malicious about this. This could literally just mean meeting people for coffees, going for activities. We're not talking about sleeping with people. We're talking about getting to know people and finding out how you're compatible. And so I should have spent the first 5 years dating and getting to know what my preferences are, getting into a relationship when it's not working, getting out and just meeting people and finding out what values that resonate with me. And then from 25, 35, the next time I met somebody who had the values that I was looking for, that I realized in the first 5 years during my exploration phase, that's what I should have then locked down that person. And obviously the caveats are that person is also interested in you and you can go and progress and have a relationship. And so it's very interesting in the sense that I think as a man, a male, and most males I speak to, you take something like physical attractiveness. And this is something I think a lot of women mistake about men, is that with physical attractiveness for men, it's like an on or off switch. One of the things I'm looking for is not the most attractive person I've ever dated or come across, because attractiveness is an on and off switch for me. It's, do they simply pass a threshold? Do I find them cute? Do I find them attractive? And that's really, after that point is reached, it's irrelevant, right? It's like anything else is a cherry on top. For me, I've actually always summarized the 3 things I'm looking for. And I say this as a high-level summary, and this is something that's very recent. This is something I've developed. But now that I've read this book, Algorithms to Live By, and now that I'm going to be using algorithms to date by, I can apply the knowledge I have from dating people and being in relationships in the last 10 years to now make hopefully an optimal stopping decision with a partner that I can create something amazing with. And for me, my current values, or the values that I'm looking for in a partner, are both relatively simple and relatively complex. So at a high level, I've always said that I want somebody who uses Strava, somebody who reads nonfiction, and somebody who is willing to do or has done 10-day silent meditation retreat. And this seems crazy because you're probably wondering who has all of these things. And I don't mean these as absolutes. When I say I want somebody who uses Strava, they don't actually need to use Strava. But what qualities does somebody who uses Strava regularly have? Even if they're just going for a walk every day, they don't need to be an athlete. They could just be going for a walk down the street, a 20-30 minute walk every day. What it represents for me is somebody who looks after their body. So looking after your body and looking after yourself is one of the values. The second value is, do they read nonfiction? So I'm looking for somebody who's interested in the world, who wants to learn things. So they don't necessarily have to read nonfiction. They could read, there's other ways that you can learn about the world. You can be somebody who's inquisitive and ask questions, but they have to have the value of wanting to learn. And so when I say I want somebody who reads nonfiction, and when I joke about, Twilight doesn't cut it, I'm not specifically talking about, oh yeah, they're a bookworm and they read books, but I'm looking for somebody who is willing to learn, and it's part of their ethos. It's what they do. And so for me, I say these superficial things because they do kind of trigger a reaction from people when I tell them, because they sound specific, but really I don't care about the specifics. It's the values they embody. And then the third one, the 10-day meditation retreat, is this somebody who values their spirituality? Do they invest in working on their mental health? And that is also an important thing. So if I sum up my 3 values, they use Strava, so they care about their physical health, they read nonfiction, they care about learning and developing their wisdom. And the third one, would they be willing to do a meditation retreat, or have they done this meditation retreat? Are they looking after their mental health and their spirituality? So that is my kind of high level requirements for what I'm looking for in a woman. And a lot of women think guys are very attracted to physical, and we are attracted to physical attraction. But when you are looking for a long-term relationship, that does change. And that is what I'm looking for. It's something I've had in the past. And as I said, a few years ago, I was dating somebody. I thought that was it, but it wasn't the case. And I've been single for a couple of years now. I didn't date for most of that because I was in COVID. And now I've realized that, well, great, I actually have this great body of knowledge. And in hindsight, I wish the person that I dated, that all the people I've dated in the past well. But there are very few of them that I would date again. Because I know now that I've done exploration, that majority of those relationships are not something that I would be happy to go for in the future. So I'm actually glad that they didn't work out for the reasons that they didn't work out. And now I'm looking forward to applying this optimal stopping algorithm to finally stop and to select an amazing partner based on the exploration that I've already done. I know the qualities that I want in a woman, and the moment I find somebody who has those qualities, I now know when to stop. So this book was particularly interesting. There are some other algorithms in there not related to dating, which are also very applicable. I'll give you a simple one. In the world of computer science and computers, we have a concept called a cache. It is somewhere where you will store things that you need to access very easily. So in the world of memory management, you'll have something called like a RAM, random access memory, and that's an example of something that's used as a cache, because anything that the software on your computer needs very readily on hand, you can store it in the RAM, and there's different levels of caches. So when it comes to the world of memory management and caching, the question is, how do you decide what to remove from that short-term memory? And our brain does this all the time, but I was actually able to apply this to all the possessions I own. So there's a principle called the least recently used, so LRU, or least frequently used. And in least recently used, it's what did you use last, or what haven't you used recently in your cache. And least frequently used is, well, as it says, what do you use the least in your cache? And so for me, when I was thinking about my clothes, I actually threw away a lot of clothes when I came back 2 weeks ago. And the reason I did this is when you are living out of a suitcase for almost a year. So I lived out of a suitcase for almost 10 months of the year in the last 12 months. You come to the realization that I'm a very suboptimal packer. So I was only wearing a subset of my clothes that I actually carried around with me. And what I realized is any of the clothes that I sent to the laundry and that I was regularly doing laundry for, so this is like my most frequently used articles, they're the clothes that I should keep. So my least frequently used stuff, the stuff that stays in my suitcase, I should throw away. This can also be least recently used as well. So you can apply both of these. So least recently used is what didn't you use lately? And my laundry is a great example of least recently used because it tells me what I didn't use. And I can also think about that in terms of frequency, but that requires a bit more work. And so when I came back to Australia, I knew what I could throw away. And anything that was in my room, recency wasn't even a question because it was least frequently used. It was like, how many times have I used this blazer in the last decade? And the fact that I haven't meant that I threw it away. So I was actually able to throw away 70% of the items of the clothing that I owned. And I came down to a very small subset because I was able to use some of these algorithms to what I like to affectionately call Marie Kondoing my possessions. And so Marie Kondo is a woman who helps people declutter and throw away things. And I was able to go ahead and do that. And so it's been very useful. And I've been able to do this with other aspects of my life. So I've been able to do this with my clothing, other possessions. There's so many things where I've been able to apply this. And I know it's making me healthier and happier. There's just less baggage I'm carrying around. So things are more efficient because I have less things to go through. And I've removed the things that I either haven't used recently or that do not get frequently used. I have a more optimal amount of clothes. I have a more optimal wardrobe that I actually use. So this is ultimately a better thing. And now that I realize that I need to be doing optimal stopping in terms of dating, I'm going to be applying the optimal stopping rule. So like I said, according to the book and according to the principle, I've already failed at applying the optimal stopping principle. However, now that I know that I have this great body of knowledge about what I want in a partner, I know how to appropriately use this to evaluate the people I will now encounter. And so the word exploit sounds very dirty, but don't take it with negative connotations. Exploit simply means exploiting the knowledge you have to make a decision. So now that I'm aware of the problem I have, which is how do I go about finding a wife, and I have this body of knowledge. It's not a perfect body of knowledge, but it is good enough. So I've done more exploration than the 33% rule. So I have a great body of knowledge. I can now go ahead and make an optimal stopping decision, or maybe in my case a suboptimal stopping decision. But I don't think that's actually the case because now that I'm at my age, I have matured and things aren't as simple as an algorithm. Right now, we have tried to summarize dating to this computer science algorithm, but it doesn't always work like that. As I said, there are complexities. We talked about the 100 secretaries problem. How do you hire the best secretary? And the real world of relationships doesn't quite work that way. It's not that simple, but it's a good principle to go ahead and apply. So I'm going to be applying this as I go through life and meet people and evaluate who might be a good partner. So I'm going to end this episode there. And to all of you listening to this, I wish you great success on all your endeavors. You've just made it through another episode of Monologues by Hassie. It brings me great pleasure to know that you made it to the end. To listen to more episodes, subscribe on your favorite podcast app or visit monologuesbyhassie.com. Thanks for swinging by.